Hey everyone, and welcome to another really exciting episode of Voice of Crypto, where we get some of the top notches from the space of Web3, blockchain, and crypto on our platform to talk all about their experiences. And today we have with us a really special guest. We have with us Pyae, who is the head of marketing for SettleMint. Hi, La, and we're really happy to have you here today with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a correction, I'm not the head of marketing at SettleMint. I'm leading the product marketing at SettleMint. But yeah, really happy to be here today.
So sorry about the confusion there. I would just request you to introduce yourselves to our viewers here today and just talk a little bit about what you're working on, what exactly is SettleMint, and all about yourself. So the stage is
Yeah, of
yours.
course. So I started out in the blockchain space since about 2020. So about roughly 3 years now. And everything started from a educational perspective. So I was co-president of the Leeds Blockchain Society back at university. So I was delivering industry webinars, workshops, hackathons, and anything that had to do with delivering knowledge about Web3 to our members. So that's really how I started. And throughout that journey, I found a lot of passion in really assisting and onboarding students into the industry. So towards the end of the year, I co-founded Champions of Blockchain with King's College London. To this day, it is the largest student-led blockchain conference in the UK. And the motivation for it really came because we saw that there were lots of conferences, there were lots of educational programs out there that were charging about 500 euros, 1,000 and more for virtual events, for virtual meetups. And yeah, we thought that it was quite unjustifiable if I was a student and I was curious to learn about the industry. It just simply wasn't a level playing game. And I thought it definitely wasn't the right approach if we wanted to bring on the next wave of talent into blockchain. So we went on to set up that conference, and we made it entirely free for students. And it was a major success. We had nearly 700 delegates from 60 countries, and we had speakers from IBM, Coinbase, R3, the United Nations, and much more. And that's where I met SettleMint. So SettleMint is a blockchain application development platform. And I've been here for over a year and a half. I've worked across the commercial and marketing departments, and now I'm leading the product marketing initiative. So that's a little bit about how my journey started and where I am now.
Wow, sounds amazing. Quite a bit you've done in very few years, I must say. And when you met SettleMint back there, back when you were in college, doing a lot of stuff, sort of removing those barriers that students had of entering in this space. So when you met SettleMint back then, what was it particularly about this project that sort of pulled you towards it? And I would also love for you to explain to our viewers what SettleMint exactly does.
Yeah, of course. So one thing that really made me interested about SettleMint was just how the company overlapped with a lot of different industries. And primarily everything, like a lot of my interest started with the intersection of supply chain and blockchain. I found the concept of international trade, settlements, cross-border payments, and logistics, and how blockchain could make some of those processes better. I found that really interesting. And so we had a supply chain panel in my conference, and SettleMint was one of them. And I saw that the industries that SettleMint was focusing on wasn't specific to just supply chain, but also in financial services, government, and beyond. So from a learning perspective for myself, I thought it would be great to get a little bit of exposure to all of them. As for what exactly SettleMint is, I would describe SettleMint as a product, a foolproof production grade product rather than a project. So essentially, it is a tooling, it is a platform that allows you to build blockchain applications easily. So what that means is, there are obviously lots of layer 1, layer 2 blockchains. And to build a blockchain application, you obviously need to start with choosing the blockchains you want to build upon. So SettleMint starts out by offering that infrastructure layer so that you can easily connect to those blockchains. And then there are layers above that, for instance, smart contract development libraries, there are integration tooling, there's backend management system. So essentially, it is a full stack tooling that walks you through the infrastructure, the backend, the blockchain bits, to writing the business logic in your smart contracts, to actually building the front end. So yeah, I mean, it's essentially something that will help you build any blockchain application on any of the protocols you want to.
Yeah. Wow, superb. So, when exactly did your journey in this Web3 or blockchain space start? What year was it?
Yeah, so it was around 2020, in my final year of university. At that time, concepts were still at a very early stage. The term crypto was still seen as a very fraudulent, scammy term. I mean, the conversations around that were Bitcoin or Ethereum. And we look at today, and then we see there's just so much value creation that has happened over the last 3 years. And it's been a really fast but exciting transition to see.
Absolutely. So, while in the last year itself, a lot has happened in this space, just in terms of standalone events or how the space has grown or changed. So, from 2020 to now, if we look from your point of view, what all in this space has changed, and what are some of those major shifts that really sort of took you back?
Yeah, I mean, first, like if we look at just what's happened for your average individual, we can look at jobs, for example. I mean, in 2020, around that time when I started in the space, the concept of working in Web3 was very foreign because it wasn't an industry that was validated yet. In terms of a lot of institutional players, enterprises, governments together coming in to say, hey, this is legitimate, this is going to be a force of evolution for the next internet. There wasn't that validation. So people were like, yeah, that is interesting, but it's more of a side thing to learn about when you have time, not really as something that you can dedicate your career on. And now you see that people are working full-time in blockchain, like myself, in Web3. You see that people are starting to have their salaries paid in crypto, in stable coins. And so just looking at that, you're able to see the evolution of how people went from wondering about, hey, can I get a job in Web3, to people actually being paid in digital currencies and work full-time in it. So that little piece in itself just goes to show how much the space has changed in the span of 3 years.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think in 2022, the growth that we saw was, while there were events that deterred users from entering the space, especially if you look at the fall of quite a few centralized exchanges. So how do you think that has impacted people's thinking about the space? And while there's still a lot of negative narrative about the space, where do you think you would be able to differentiate between those ills of the space? And do you really think that these things have affected the larger narrative?
I definitely think they do have an effect. For example, like you mentioned, last year, it was a very difficult year for Web3 in general,
Yeah.
with the fallout of Terra Luna, and a whole host of
Yeah,
a whole host
Celsius,
of
and then
other,
there was um yeah.
yeah, and a whole host of other exchanges. So that definitely has an impact because from 2021 we were seeing it was like the Web3 gold rush. There was a lot of money coming in, a lot of investment, a
Mm.
lot of trust. There were points where, you know, your typical partner at consultancies, the big four, would be changing their LinkedIn profile to NFTs because
Yeah.
the gold rush was just so immense that everyone wanted to be a part of it.
Mhm.
And the domino pieces started falling, and so it definitely affected the way end users will have an impression of Web3. However, I think with any new technology, things like this happen. I think, you know, circumstances like this, it weeds out the bad players, and it really enhances that process of filtering, so that innovation can really be iterative,
Yeah.
and that, you know, when something doesn't work out, like there is a pivot to another better strategy. And
Mm.
so with, you know, with the start of the internet evolution from web 1 and 2 as well, you know, it is the same circumstance with
Yeah.
any industry. And so we're seeing that in blockchain as well. A lot of bubbles have bursted, but I think it is actually necessary
Mm.
to have innovation that is focused for the end user and
Yeah.
one that will be sustainable for the test of
Mhm.
time.
Absolutely. A lot
Yeah.
of people say this phrase about a lot of Web3 startups that there's a lot of noise in the market because of that certain gold rush, that boom that we're talking about. People also say that because of that, owing to that gold rush, people are trying to uh, basically find solutions to problems that don't exist. So, how much do you agree with that saying about the space?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that, you know, it's a equal, it's a bi-directional thing. For instance, what I mean by that is, you know, just the concept of finding a product market fit.
Mm.
There's a concept that, you know, you can be a brilliant CTO with the perfect solution, and then try and get that to the market, and then people don't see the value in it because
Yeah.
they don't resonate with it. Or you could have, you know, you could have a great idea, but also not really have the technological backup to validate that business idea or solution or whatever groundbreaking concept you have. So it really is a balance.
Mm.
Well, and there is a concept of, you know, creating your own category,
Mm.
creating your own little niche in this puzzle, whether that may be in Web3 or any other industry vertical. And
Mm.
sometimes you have to condition the market such that they understand the value of a new category and how that can change the way
Yeah.
they go about their daily lives. One thing that my CEO actually shared recently
Mm.
was, you know, when Henry Ford started out his like empire for cars, he, you know, if he asked what people wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
um you know, if he listened to them, they would
Mm.
have said faster horses. But
Yeah.
in creating a new category of transportation, you know, to get from one point to the another, it required reimagining, you know, the entire way that operated. And
Absolutely.
sometimes you have to hone out, you have to filter out the noise, to really be brave to envision what, you know, what society would look like differently with your invention, with your new category.
Mhm. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So, being an insider, when I say that, I mean someone who has been in the space for quite some time, and you're pretty familiar with what sort of products or services people might need or require. So, how would you, as an insider, differentiate between a solid product or a service and something that is just noise and needs to be kept away?
Yes, of course. So, I mean, a solid product or service, it would firstly, it would actually be solving, a real problem that exists in whatever, shape or form that may be in. And it has to be something that is like sustainable.
Mm,
And another way to look at it is, at least from a business point of view, if we're talking about, the success of that product or service, it should be able to have sustainable recurring revenue
mm,
every single month, every year, and have that growing for, the next 6 years, 12 years, for the next decade as well. Because if there's a sustainable business model with recurring revenue, that means that you're consistently solving a problem,
yeah,
and users of your solution believes in you, that their problems are being solved, that they're willing to pay
yeah.
perpetually for your services. And so it continues. And so you're able to expand with that funding,
Mm,
getting more research and development, more employees to grow your service. So
yeah.
you can look at it from a business angle, and you can look at it from an industry angle.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So if you have to think about two really groundbreaking technologies that are coming up, which might in fact change the future and how we view it, what would they be?
Ooh, that's a big one. In terms of like what would change the future,
Mm,
I really want to like, because often in Web3, we fly very, very high up to the clouds that, it's really important to get back on the ground again to see the
yeah,
world for
yeah,
what it is today, and not, what, this utopian future might look like far out in the future.
yeah.
With that said, I think, just very, very simple use cases
Mm,
that can become something really big just on user adoption, the simplicity of it, and just the fundamental economics. I think those are the ones
yeah.
that will enable a solid evolution. So one thing that I've been really interested since last year, just something very simple, the concept of soulbound tokens and
Mm,
POAPs.
yeah.
The concept of Web3 really started as a movement of, I would say, people wanting ownership of their digital identities, right? It started out with a yearning for decentralization. And the industry has, explored and experimented with
Mm,
different variations of that.
mm,
However, I think that is the sort of motivation at its core. And I think decentralized identities enabled through soulbound tokens is a very interesting use case.
yeah.
So if we look at things like academic records,
Mm,
for instance, if I can verify the proof of my graduation from my university,
mm,
across my employers, across other universities I want to apply to, and that record is shared in a digital ledger that all institutions can access, that would save a lot of my time, and also the time of the institutions that want
yeah.
it. The same goes for medical records,
Mm,
for your national identification, if you need it for travel, for example. So I think that's really interesting. The concept of POAPs as well. Really, these are just varying types of ways that, tokens are created. So non-transferable tokens, fungible tokens, non-fungible
mm,
tokens. And with POAPs, it's really, it's interesting for me because, with the narrative of NFTs, it was really about how can we take consumer engagement to the next
yeah.
level. And
Mm,
POAPs are very simple. You go
mm,
to an event, you're there and you are verified and validated that you were there through the form
Right.
of a proof of attendance protocol token. And that could be a start for many things, right? What we hear about utility behind NFTs,
Yeah.
where if you have this NFT, you're able to do this, access this, and then you'll have long-term value from the brand through
Mm,
XYZ. And POAPs can be an enabler, a very simple start
yeah.
that can, build the confidence of consumers like
Absolutely.
along that path of transformation. So yeah, very simple, these two, but
Yeah.
I think, very simple concepts
Yeah.
that work, that are easy
Mhm.
to understand, fast to use, cheap,
Mhm.
accessible. These are the ones that will set up a solid foundation for what Web3 will look like for the next decade.
Could you talk about soulbound tokens a little more? Because if you could just decode what soulbound tokens are, what sort of a utility they have, we did get what POAPs are.
Yeah,
Just
of course. So Soulbound tokens, just think of them as non-transferable tokens that live on the blockchain. So for instance, if I have so I went to the University of Leeds,
Mhm.
um, and there is a Soulbound token to represent the fact that I attended there, that I graduated from there. The representation of that token, I cannot transfer this to on blockchain terms to another address and have that identity say, hey,
Right.
no, it was that address that went to the University of Leeds and studied,
Mhm.
economics. That cannot be transferred. And so it goes back down to identity, right? You can't
Yeah.
transfer your identity. And so the use cases that are linked to that are more in terms of record of information keeping,
Yeah.
academics, medical, government, and a whole host of other stuff.
Makes sense. Literally bound to your soul, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of chit chat about the merge of AI and Web3. And with the, let's say, smarter AI coming up, something like our chat GPT or, uh, those AI that let you
Mhm.
generate any sort of a picture or image with just a certain prompt. So, what do you think are the capabilities of AI merging with Web3 in the future?
I think we're still a long way to go from that. Especially with AI as well. Chat GPT is it's a really interesting innovation that did take, well over 6-7 years to implement. So I
Mhm.
think we're in the very early stages.
Yeah,
But there's definitely, already a merge of innovations between Web3 and AI already taking
yeah.
place. If we look at, for example, like an NFT,
Mm,
and the assets that are represented within the NFT,
mm,
people are experimenting with ways, these assets can be generated through the form of AI as well. But
yeah.
we're in the very, very early stages as well. And really, if we want to try and sort of see how things go, we can look at, blockchain in a fundamental nature of the way data is processed, managed, shared, and owned. And AI, being a technology that takes that data to create something meaningful, useful, and new. So data being, the underlying thing, there's definitely a strong intersection
Mm,
that both of them can create.
absolutely. Um, while we're almost at the end of our interview, there are still a few questions that I have in mind, and I just get back to the role that you have at SettleMint. So you are into product marketing, and I hope I said it right this time. So, so you do have to deal a lot with communities, and there's one thing that we know about Web3 is that the communities are really solid, they're very well lit, and there's a lot of learning. If once you're a part of certain communities, the growth graph sure is pretty sharp. So, What are the best parts about these Web3 communities, according to you? And what is the importance of this community in this space?
Yes, of course. So from my personal experience from last year in the UK in general, I would say it was really the year where community kicked off. And there were lots of great communities on the ground that were facilitating discussions, facilitating teaching as well, and just overall support as people are trying to navigate this wild west of Web3. And I really found that community in Web3 is truly a special thing. And it's one of its strongest driving forces to create rapid innovation. Compared to, other industries that I've seen and interacted with in the past, Web3 is really friendly. It's more the sense of, we can say there's competition with cooperation. There isn't, I haven't really seen a situation where, for example, like an innovator, a founder wouldn't want to share, at least like the high level overview of how, what they do works, and be able to lend resources to each other. So I think communities in Web3 it's a really special thing. Now, how do you, access these communities? So there are lots of online and offline communities, and it's definitely great to do a balance of both. In terms of offline communities, I'm based in the UK, so there are lots in London. NFT UK is it's one. There are lots of talented people there. Some of them have become my very close friends. There's the DLT Hub, there's Front Door, and a whole host of other stuff where people are just brought together to learn, to share, and to grow together. As for online communities, people join either projects that they're interested in, brands they're interested in, technologies they're interested in, and the mediums in which they are present in are primarily on Discord, on Telegram, maybe on Twitter as well. Some of that can be overwhelming at the start, but you learn to adapt to it, and you learn to have a healthier relationship with just balancing your day-to-day life and interacting with this new and exciting community.
Yeah. So if you have to talk about, I'm sure with the technology as new and that is still growing as blockchain and Web3, there are a lot of pros for sure, but there ought to be a lot of cons as well. So what are a few demerits of this growing technology according to you?
Yeah, that really depends, because if we talk about Web3, blockchain is just a component of this. There are lots of, it's a whole bucket of innovations from AI, from blockchain, from the metaverse and all of that. And then there's blockchain as well. So like any new technology, there are going to be bad actors, a lot like what we saw last year. There's going to be a loss of trust, and then there's going to be a rebound of trust again, as that that bottom gets rescued out. So in terms of specifics, it can be misinformation that is also delivered by social media, which is actually very common, just for individual incentives, to essentially put a bad name on a product, a service, a community, or an individual, for individual gain. That is really prominent, and that is a very huge risk. In terms of money laundering and bad practices, it is an issue. It is an issue that blockchain can solve. But however, its issue is also magnified in comparison to what happens in the fiat world, where money laundering happens in in magnitudes that we can't even imagine of. So It's about really trying to focus on the road ahead, and also, of course, be open to criticism,
Yeah.
not to be an absolute, maximalist, uh,
Mm.
and completely saying, what is there is the best. It is the be all and end all. I don't believe that's the case. I think every innovation needs to be stripped apart,
Yeah.
tested, iterated, revamped until it can be implemented for everyone.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Education, most of all, is what would beat the misinformation. And it's great to see a lot of platforms coming up and trying to educate crowds about this growing technology. My last and final question would be, are you hopeful about the technology's future? Kind of a generic one, but still. And I mean, how hopeful are you about the growth of this sector?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm very, very hopeful, not just because I'm working in the industry,
Yeah.
but just if we look at, it can be easy to, to see things at a not so pretty light when, you look at what the industry has happened in, for example, a 6-month period of time, a
Yeah.
1-year period of time. But if you look at where we are now compared to 6 to 12 years ago, we have achieved exponential growth. And being at SettleMint, I primarily am very much exposed to the infrastructure side of things, the technology side of things. And just one statistic we saw from last year was a huge influx of new wallets that are installed, of new smart contract developers that are being
Mhm.
onboarded into the DApp ecosystem.
Yeah.
In terms of the amounts of new code that are being committed to open source blockchain forums, the amounts of blockchain applications that are actually deployed. So, all of these statistics, a lot of people tend to look away from,
Mm.
but they're actually really important, because they describe that, the real builders of the space have not shied away from the threat of, of public information.
Mhm.
They believe in the technology, not just from an infrastructure angle, but also on the end applications that can ultimately influence users. And that trend is prominent throughout all the major leading layer 1 and layer 2 blockchains. And I don't think it's stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. Yes, more power to the space any day. So thank you so much, Le, for joining us today. And do you have any final closing thoughts?
Yeah, firstly, just it's a pleasure to be here.
Amen.
But yeah, just wanted to say, to anyone new that are looking to get into the space, and primarily because I started out as a student, that was just curious about the space in general. I just really wanted to encourage, the youth to get out there. It is a steep learning curve, but just be patient. It is really worthwhile. The community is something that you'll really not experience anywhere else. There's a lot of innovation there, and there's a place in it for all of you. And the best way to learn is by doing so. If you're interested in NFTs, don't take a course on it. Like, save 50 pounds and go mint your first NFT.
Yeah.
Study the wallets, look at how wallet addresses work, and all of that. If you're interested in a concept, write about it. So go out there, be brave. There's a space in Web3 for all of you. So good luck. And yeah, again, big pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And it was a great chat. Lovely words you said. Being brave will definitely help anyone to get out there in this space because it is big enough to accommodate a lot of new members as well. So thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you
And
again.
sorry, one last thing I wanted to say. So this is a hat from SettleMint, and this kind of reflects my motto for the year and the coming years ahead. It says make DLT great again. And I hope all of you can join me in this journey.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
All right.
All
Cheers.
right. Thank you so much. Cheers. It was
Thanks
great
a lot.
to
Bye-bye.
chat with you today. Bye bye.